Video request time from Daft Bugger. So, hi Kyle. I used to be an atheist until I had the strangest thought of my life. Up until that point, I believed, and I can't read it through here because there's too much stuff in the way, so hopefully you can see. I believed science was able to explain the nature of reality. I became interested in the concepts of Darwin and the theories of natural selection to explain the development of humans and the natural world. When looking at a dog, I was able to explain why it looked and behaved in a certain way based upon centuries of selective breeding by humans. I understood how living creatures had DNA which determined physical attributes. Then I had an epiphany when I realized I had an ability to explain the existence of everything external, but not that of my very own consciousness. Why am I me, and not you, or some other living creature such as a dog? Then I started trying to remember back into my childhood, trying to figure out when I first realized I was conscious of my existence. Even on the scale of a single sperm and egg leading towards our eventual consciousness is bizarre and improbable. Even though we don't have any scientific evidence for a soul, do you think the soul provides the answer to our own unique individual existence? The computer you use was produced in a factory, and it serves the purpose we assign it. In human terms, you exist, but you can't understand what your thoughts, programming, or originated, or where the design consciousness came from. Also, if you could please look up this video, Dr. Quantum Double Slit experiment. It shows how the universe is far more complex than human comprehension. I was wondering if you feel that the fact we exist, or you exist at all, is so unlikely and inexplicable, it proves there are much greater forces at play than we can possibly explain. Please also comment on your thoughts regarding the Double Slit experiment. Thanks. Alrighty. Daft Bugger. Cool request. So, Daft Bugger used to be an atheist, and then you were like, wait, maybe science doesn't explain everything. You used to think that science explained everything. I can understand atheists, where atheists are coming from. Atheists are people who... atheists have existed since the beginning of time. So I'm talking about, and the reasons why people are atheists changes throughout time. So I'm talking about modern day atheists. I think modern day atheists, and they're generally smarter than fundamentalist Christians. Some of the smartest people are atheists. Although it's kind of hard to know, if somebody's an atheist or not an atheist among the famous people, because people don't wear their religion on their sleeve so much. Yeah, atheists can be smart. But I think atheists are people who don't have a good education in the religious area. Like their parents aren't very religious and never talked about that stuff, or they just don't talk to their parents about anything really. So they get all their information from school, which doesn't include any religion. And so they see religion as they only see the negative side of religion, which is easy to do because there's so many negative things that religion has done. I saw this movie Philomania, where the nunnery took the girl's son away from her, and they do bad things in history. But atheists just they kind of they reject God and the soul and everything because of partly as a reaction to the bad things that religion has done and not wanting, kind of like the communists. We're atheists, fighting against all control of like some another class. But I'm really high right now, by the way. Yeah, but atheists, but they also, their other problem is that they, losing my train of thought because I'm so high. The atheists, they see the negative part of a religion, but they also, I think they get mesmerized by the whole scientific side. You know, you look at, because we've made so many new strides in science over the last couple hundred years that, and especially over the last generation, the last 50 years, that, well, yeah, especially in our generation, that it's just like mind blowing, you know. Being able to unravel the DNA and map the entire genome of the human being, you know, which is like an inevitability, you know. It's just a matter of time, like 5 more years or something like that. And you know, and then we know exactly what gene does what, and then we can genetically modify and you know, and make like designer people, you know, and play God. You know, we made the atomic bomb, we flew to the moon, you know, everything, all the science, it like makes us play God. So we're like, oh, we've got it all figured out through the science, which is different, which is a different beast than, you know, the religious side of it and belief in God and all that. Science is all about, you don't have to be that smart, actually, to be a scientist. You just, you know, especially like in traditional science, you just learn all the rules and then you do the experiments and voila, you're a scientist. And you don't have to have a well-rounded mind or anything. And I think a lot of scientists, you know, in the past have, you know, a lot of scientists are smart. Oppenheimer was smart. But a lot of scientists, they just do their job. They're just technicians who do their job. And we look up to scientists so much as a society because of all the stuff science does, and because, you know, we want to make people scientists so that our country does well. The country that's the most scientifically advanced has a huge advantage economically because you can create products that you can sell to everybody else. You know, you want to be higher up on the food chain of the economy, and it's all based on how scientific you are, you know, how high up on the food chain. Do you want to be like a farmer country, or like a third world country, or do you want to be like Japan making all the cool electronic shit? So we look up to scientists so much, but at the end, scientists, the ones who create all this stuff, and these giant companies are just technicians, and they're not the people you want to be looking up to. And so we look up to that whole idea of, you know, so then that's all we pay attention to, you know, and we block out anything else. And, you know, and because there's so many scientific advancements and so much to learn, and it's so fascinating that our focus can be so much on it that we can actually block out all of the other stuff, the religion and everything, and easily, and not be drawn to it and not worry about it because we're just too into the whole science stuff, you know. Kind of like a kid, you buy him a video game for Christmas, and all day Christmas he'll play his video game and he won't be paying attention. He won't even be eating, you know, and then he'll wake up the next day, he'll be all hungry and thirsty. And, you know, what's wrong? Oh, I was playing video games. So it's kind of like what we're doing with the whole science, just too much. But then it gets to the point and you're like, wait, what's wrong, you know? So now you're hungry for, you know, spirituality, and you're, but science doesn't explain that at all. Well, actually, science does explain it in the double slit experience. The best scientific explanation, actually, for that. But at that point, it's like people are addicted to it. You know, you can get addicted to certain mindsets. Kind of like a kid who gets addicted to the video game, and now it's like, hey, let's play. Your legs hurt. You know, you're sick. You're not healthy. Go outside and ride your bike around. No way, video game. Oh, no, video game best. You know, it's like you get into the comfort zone or something, and you can't step out the box, and, you know, kind of like boiling a frog, you know. You're boiling your mind slowly. And, but yeah, because I've had conversations actually like this with somebody about the double slit. Yeah, it was in my Where Buddhism Went Wrong video. I said Buddhism went wrong because they don't believe in God. And then some atheist was like, what, you don't believe in God? Well, God doesn't believe. So I was like, what? And he claimed to be some like physicist. I could tell he was full of shit by the way he was talking. He was just some stupid punk kid. But this kid was going back and forth with me forever, though. I mean, and, but I was like, double slit experiment. He's like, trying to tell me that the double slit experiment was totally explainable, didn't explain anything. And I was like, well, how doesn't it? And I explained why. And they're like, you know, the douchebag, faggot, no, duh, or whatever. But yeah, you can't, you know. And to get in a scientist to explain that you can't, to admit that you can't explain the double slit experiment is a good way to break them out of their mold when they try to tell you this or that or the other thing. Because a lot of scientists, you know, they're not that smart, you know, and even in their own field, dude. I was in Vienna at a youth hostel. Here, I'll get back to this. This is a good stopping point. Okay, yeah, so I'm in the youth hostel, and one of my bunkmates in the room was a geologist who was German or something, and he was in Vienna for a geology conference. And I was like, "Oh, geologist, have you ever heard? What do you think about? What do you think about the growing Earth theory? You think the Earth's growing?" And he's like, "Huh?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I explained him the whole growing Earth theory and the scientific reasons, and he was like George Bush and Harold and Kumar. He was like, "Wow, it blew my mind, man. Never heard that in my entire life," or whatever. No, he wasn't that. He wasn't like all that interested. He was like, "I never heard of that. Cool, what?" And I was like, "Huh?" Yeah, so, I mean, that's geology 101 right there. But that's like, you know, the whole paradigm being ass backwards, so you can't even, you've never even heard of it, because it's like a conspiracy theory or something to you, and it's just bizarre. Just to explain that really quickly, because I know people are like, "Huh, growing Earth theory?" Regular scientists think that that oil comes from dead dinosaurs and shit, but oil is underneath the ocean. You know, you see drills underneath the ocean, drilling out of ocean bed that's only 4 million years old. So how the fuck did dinosaur bones get under there? Dinosaurs don't fall down and then go sideways. Oil comes from the inside of the earth. It's the byproduct of the growing earth. The earth is a living being, just like a plant, just like a tree, and the sun rays, the high frequency sun rays, reach the center of the earth and actually grow the earth. And the byproduct of that, the poop, is oil. And I mean, everything grows like that. Look at your lawn. Every year you have to rake up all the leaves and shit from your lawn. And if you don't, it just, you know, grows and grows. Like shit grows from the sunlight. Sunlight and water, which continuously falls in the atmosphere, you know, grows out of nothing. Sunlight turns into actual trees and houses and stuff, you know. So the earth grows. You can see it, earth growing in front of you. But the earth grows from the inside as well. But anyways, and there's all sorts of scientific reasons, you know, like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, there's no way it could be that big in our gravitational field. It'd have to be the earth have to be smaller. But anyways, so that's why scientists are like, you know, looked up to and shit. And so, I mean, I met a rocket scientist actually once. Motherfucker, this bastard, dude. I was in a youth hostel, and he was like, rocket scientist or whatever. And I was like, "Oh, rocket scientist." And I was like all stoned. And anyway, he was all like, he was a dick, dude. He was all acting all cooler than thou and shit. And like ignoring me and talking to the other guy. He was just a dick. People who are like super rich or super like have like that job or whatever, sometimes like I notice sometimes those motherfuckers are just dicks. For example, see, now I'm getting totally sidetracked, but people are like, "What?" I have to give examples, so let me give you a really quick example. Teaching English in Santiago, man, like the rich lawyer people, like the higher up and the older and shit they got, like the colder and meaner they were, dude. Like just not even looking at you and shit. Fucking crazy. Anyways, so yeah, so we look at that. But see, that's why I think, I guess this does kind of tie back in, because we look up to that whole scientist stuff, but all it is just technical shit. It's like so what? You've memorized the fucking periodic table. It's like, what does that mean? And that's what's fucked up about our whole educational system. And I know daft buggers from England, but I'm talking about that's what's fucked up about our whole educational system worldwide. in that, I guess originating from Western culture, but is that we just put too much faith on that whole the whole technology, growing the technology stuff to get our country ahead. And see now, but now I think it's time to turn the corner and try to take it to the next level, which isn't, making the world a better place by constantly making sure that we're improving our technology. Because we're already, that ball, the momentum on that ball is already started. That ball's rolling. Nothing's going to stop it. People, we love the whole technology. We're always going to expand our technology. So we don't have to, put extra focus on that anymore. The next step is to apply it. It's the application of it, it's kind of like there's different kinds of people. You have your engineers and you have your artists. We've been putting too much focus on the engineers and too much respect on the engineers, I think. And it's time to, but now the engineers are like, engineering the fuck out of everything. And now it's time for the artists to start saying, okay, here's how we're going to apply this stuff, For example, it's like in the world of computers and websites and stuff, people are just getting more and more with the data and stuff. You can see, because I've been studying like this bicycle watts and stuff lately, and yeah, people are like analyzing the shit out of that stuff and all this kind of websites and comparisons and all that kind of stuff, and that's great. But how are we going to take it to the next level? And that's when you integrate not just data within one field or one person or one group of people, but when you integrate the data of everything, of all the different sciences, and that's the next level of science. And that's why the problem with science now is they're not paying attention to each other and they're not looking at the big picture, and that's so the geologists don't know, the anatomists don't know about the growing earth theory because they're not talking to each other. So that's the perfect example of it. Of scientists causing us to be dumb because they're just paying too much attention to their data and not to the big picture. And that is something that lay people can actually really excel at, is because there's so much raw data out there on the internet you can get and cross-check with all different fields. You can come up with all sorts of cool ideas and stuff, like history. That's part of my history channel. Everything I do on the internet. I'll be done by the end of the year, but anyways, so scientists, the concept of Darwin. Oh yeah, see, but we're not even that far ahead in our scientific discussion. It's comical. We're gonna look back and laugh on it in 50 years. I can't believe we're still having these discussions now. But like the whole intelligent design versus evolution argument, they're both fucking wrong. I mean, mainstream, the mainstream intelligent design and the mainstream evolution, like what the hell is wrong with mainstream media? How come you don't ever hear them the truth, the middle ground? It's like people are allergic to it or something. I mean, I know they've got to have heard it somewhere, but look, the intelligent design people are fucking idiots. I'll explain why they're both fucking idiots. The intelligent design are fucking morons because they're the biggest idiots. Because they're not looking at science or the data at all. They're like the Bible. The Old Testament, they're going to get all their idea of the world from the Old fucking Testament. That's just one of many Bibles of legends of stories from around the entire world. It just happened to be of the tradition of Jesus, who created Christianity. But Jesus was quoting his Bible and his Old Testament, to try to help explain to his people the religious concepts. You would use the story of the people you're talking to, the history of the people you're talking to teach them something. But the whole idea about Christianity is that it's the religion for everybody. So why would you, if the Christianity is the religion for everybody, then by definition, it's not allowed to put any more weight on the Old Testament than Fucking Indian legends, man. It's the same shit. It's the religion for everybody, not, you know. So anyway. So these fundamentalist Christians, they're putting all this weight on the Old Testament like it's the word of God, as if Jesus ever said that. So the world was therefore created 6,000 years ago, and you know, and they pick and choose. The Old Testament says that gives instructions for abortion. It explains it. I think it's in Jeremiah. I'll comment on the comment section below. I'll tell you which passage it says it in. But you know, so these Christians making up pro-life. It's just for their own. That's another video, but. You know, and the long hair and all that kind of stuff. Thou shalt keep a short hair because Samson cut his hair or whatever. It's like, what the fuck? You retarded? So those guys are idiots. And now you have the atheists, the evolution people. Evolution, as Darwin explained it, is incomplete. It's a great explanation that natural selection, that there's just random mutations, and the one that has the proper mutation in the changing environment is going to survive and have the babies, and there you go, and that's random selection. And that's actually, you know what? That's actually perfectly right. They're not idiots at all. But what I was saying is, when they were idiots, is that the way that they argue with the fundamentalist Christians is that a lot of the people who do the natural selection, they also have to be atheists. It's weird. Like, why do you have to be an atheist to believe in natural selection? But it's not just an accident. That's the problem. That's where they're morons. It's not just like a random accident. There are random accidents, but you can influence. You can influence this world by the other world. And, you know, if you look at all the beauty, and that's what Jesus was trying to explain, you know, look at the little flower. It's more ordained and beautiful than any, you know, thing that, like Solomon's temples, anything that a man could make. And so, but people want to have proof. I guess people are really afraid of having faith and stuff because people had that blind faith in the religion so long and it caused so many problems. But people need to remember that blind faith in religion is actually a rejection of evidence, you know, and rejection of logic. That's the only reason that these people do crazy things in religion. You know, if you were to sit down and reason with them, then if there's actually a place for faith, and that doesn't cause you to be crazy. So, yeah. So, I guess the gist of the video request is, how would a atheist, how would you explain to an atheist to believe in God? You know, because, and it's an important thing to know how to do, because if you're going to have a conversation with a fundamentalist Christian about, you know, intelligent design and how they want to get like evolution out of the school system and only teach intelligent design, all this kind of crazy shit, because we didn't bring the Quran over on the Mayflower, then you don't even have to change their religious idea very much. You just tweak it a little bit. You know, they believe in intelligent design because God is, you know, the great design of everything. And yeah, just talk to them about that and all the scientific proof about that. And you know, that God uses you know, natural selection to create God's beings. It's a tool. And so then you would just start going in, well, exactly how and what and why and all the scientific support. And there is scientific support, okay, for the afterlife. The biggest and most important one is, and the easiest to find, would be just past life memories. People knowing stuff in the past that there's no way that they would have known. The little boy who remembered his past life in World War II and the plane he crashed on, and even his friends' names and everything. The old man in India who remembered, or the kid who in India remembered he was this old man in the village, and he went over to the village and he found something he buried. He buried coins when he was an old man, found them because he remembered them from the past life. Anyways, there's zillions of stories like that. And we all have our own stories like that. How we communicate with, how we can relate and empathize with people in other situations from us because we've been in that situation in past life or, time periods in the past and historical stuff. So anyways, let's continue with the video request. So, so the problem with scientists, they just need to, they're just, mesmerized too much by it. So I became interested in the concepts of Darwin and the theories of natural selection. See, I think one thing that could make somebody an atheist in a bad way, a closed-minded atheist, is if you're raised religiously, who like the majority of us are, 90% of us in America are Christian, I think, something like that. And so you're raised religiously, but your parents don't talk about religion, you don't talk about religion, and it's this watered-down version of religion. And so it's like, what? Well, you just want me to believe that shit? Just to believe it? And, all this old-fashioned explanations and, all the Old Testament stuff as though it's fact. When you have all the science over here and you're not relating your stuff to the science, then you're gonna get bored with the religion and even angry with them for insulting your intelligence like that. And you're gonna go into the science and just say, well, fuck you, religion, fuck you, everything. And they're just gonna lump it in this big lump and throw the whole belief in God in there as well, and then just throw it out. Kind of like how the communists did that with, God. Don't believe in God. We're atheists, when they kicked out all the oligarchies because religion was one of them. So, so I think that's, it's totally reactionary. But, so you can blame the religious people, like when you say to a religious person, like innocent cops should apologize for what guilty cops do, so that that they're not one of them. That they're not secretly on their side. Same thing with religious people. If somebody's going to talk trash about Christianity and you're super religious, you're like a pastor. It's like, don't get pissed off. You need to go. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and and too many churches are a little bit old fashioned and need to catch up. Like they're still got Pat Robertson on the 21 Club or whatever it's called, saying that you're going to burn in hell forever if you don't bow down to Jesus Christ, even if you believe in God. Like you said that like last month. So, okay, so when looking at a dog, I was able to explain behaved. Yeah, you can explain all that kind of stuff. So I guess one big interesting thing is, how does DNA relate to your mind and the physical world? How much of DNA is affected by your mind and how much of it is affected by like the scientific stuff we can see, the cause and effect, the interbreeding and all this kind of stuff. And if you genetically engineer a person to have a certain personality or be a certain way, then that takes the individuality away from them, and there's no actual God person behind them, and they're just a product of you, kind of like a highly tuned computer. So how do you reconcile that? How can the person be an individual but also be programmed by his parents? Well, it's always been like that. Just because you're programming an individual genetically now with much more of a complex way doesn't mean that you weren't doing that all along in a simpler way. When parents have children, they decide which parent they're going to have it with, which creates a certain kind of person. When you raise children, the formative years, the first 6 years of a person's life, how you treat that person is going to determine how they're going to act. If you're loving to a kid, he's going to be a loving adult. If you're mean to a kid, they're going to be a mean adult. If you teach a kid to be super honest as a child, they'll be super honest, and maybe be too honest and stuff. You program your kids just the same way as you program computers. So you could give the same argument. And the fact of the matter is that you're both. Why can't it be both? Why people have to be so either or? The kid chooses the parents too. You're flying around and they have the choice of a zillion people to look at. And when you're in the spirit world, you can look into the future, and we'll explain that with the double slit experiment. But you can see probabilities, and you can see this, that, and the other thing. You can see, you're aware of a lot more, but you have power over a lot less, and that's why you want to live here. But so you choose which parent you're going to have, and you know how your parents are going to treat you, so you just programmed yourself. It's like saying, which kind of computer do I want to get, or which kind of car do I want to drive? I want to have a car that's going to take me up into the mountains and drive me on this trail and up and that trail and that trail and that trail. So you buy the proper car for it. What kind of computer I want to get? I want a computer that's going to, take me through this program, that. So what kind of parent do I want? I want a parent who's going to take me through this, that, and the other thing. Same thing. And so it's a give and take, and you influence each other. And children have an enormous effect on their parents anyways in this life. It's not like the parents only program the children. So we're all programming each other. So it's the same thing with, genetically modified people. We're just taking the whole, but to look at it in a more expansive way, that's actually, on the ramifications of that are actually pretty amazing, because if you're programming a person genetically and everything, that means the soul on the other side that's going to choose which body they're going to be born into has more to analyze than what they're going to choose. More different kinds of people to analyze, which means they're going to be more in touch with you while they're still on the other side. So once they die, there's going to be much more of a affinity between you and your child like that. They're going to be much more similar to you, because the talent pool is bigger when you can pick and choose exactly what kind of person you want to be with. Like with internet dating or whatever. You can find the right person for you in a college of 20,000 people than you are in a college of like 3,000 people. So, that actually opens up the doors, cause and effect, to a more utopian society where people are more communicative with each other, which then opens up to a more spiritual society, which then makes it so that even you can even die more consciously, and then and it just goes up from there. And then what's next? There's always something next. And then after you die, maybe you can still communicate with the person who just died. Like with your mind. Maybe or you can live in this world of telepathy. But anyways, that's in the direction of where we're going, and the direction of evolution. If you look at it from a historical perspective and analyze it, and you can come up with that trajectory. That's what's in our future. And so all this genetic modifying and stuff, it's all good. It just expands our power. It doesn't take our power away. People have such a negative idea about science, like too much genetic engineering. Then they're just going to genetically modify robots who can't think for themselves. Well, that's it's up when you're going to look at just the negative side of things. That's your decision. That's your fault. That's people looking at new technology from an old paradigm. And you have to change the way you're going to look at the world when the new technology comes, Just like Jesus says, you don't put old wine in old wineskins. You have to put new wine in new wineskins, or else the old wineskin becomes torn. So, all right. So, when looking at a dog, I was able to explain it, behaved based on centuries of selective breeding by humans. I understood how living creatures had DNA which determined physical attributes. Then I had an epiphany when I realized I had an ability to explain the existence of everything external, but not of my very own consciousness. Why am I me and not you? Or some other living creature such as a dog? Yeah, see, that's the most important question. It's like, well, who am I? It's like, oh, I can explain this, I can explain that, I can explain this. Wow, aren't I badass? Well, it's like, well, can you explain you? Like, what am I then? It's like, like I'm so smart and I know all this and I can do all that and we can do all this and we can do all that. For us to, when our body dies, for us to just, our soul to die too, for us, our soul to depend on our body to survive is, that is way too limiting of a possibility for people as great as human beings. Human beings are way too great for that. That's like driving around on a Mercedes that you can only fill up the tank once. Like who drives around on something like that? No, you have or you could have all kinds of different kinds of analogies. It's like, well, your body is your tool. That's where you live inside of. You live in your body. That's why you say my body. I have a body. You don't refer to you as your body. Like when somebody dies, you don't say, where's Jimmy Joe? You say, where's Jimmy Joe's body? because we all know, that's the agreement we all have since the beginning of time. Did you know what animal means? It means anima. You know what anima means? It means soul. Animals are souls. They're people. They're people just like you and me, but they're in another vehicle. We've always known that, and we've always agreed on that. And for those like brainwashed type people or stupid people who just believe in what the consensus says, well, that's your consensus. Is that we're alive. We're not our body. We live inside of our body, and it's always been like that. And so that's why we've always had a religion, to explain that, to try to explain. Because we already agreed that we believe that, so now we just want to explain it. There's always been atheists, but atheists have always been more of a fringe group, and they're still fringe. 10% don't believe in God, but America and worldwide, but and it's always kind of been like that. But and it ebbs and flows based on the abuses of the religion. So, anyways, yeah. So how do I explain me? Yeah. So now that we've established that we do believe that we're eternal, well then, and we have science that backs it up with reincarnation, then just believe in reincarnation. Like, I've always believed in reincarnation. It's so bizarre how people who are your friends and they're smart just are undecided about reincarnation. It's like, undecided? So what's the alternative? You mean you're undecided, so you think it may be possible that your soul's just going to extinguish after your body dies? Or, no, not that. That's what most people would say. No, I just don't know if it's reincarnation or something else. Well, what else would it be? Where would you go? You're a human being. You live on the earth. Are you going to go and reincarnate as a fucking, like, star or something? Like, no, you're going to reincarnate as a human being. Oh, no, I'm too good for this world. I think I'm going to go to heaven and live on top of a cloud and play the harp. Like, what the fuck? No, you reincarnate as a human. But, but it's like, yeah, but I don't know if it's the traditional reincarnation. Well, that makes sense. Reincarnate one life and then you die and then reincarnate 6 months later. Maybe you can time travel reincarnation. And that's what I believe. And that's actually a new belief for me over the last 4 years. I learned it from Bashar. I got the idea. Well, I actually believed it before, but I really seriously contemplated it and was like, wow, over the last 4 years. Yeah, time travel reincarnate in, in the year Jesus, or in 50 or 1,000 years, why not? But it all depends on where your soul is. If you're going to reincarnate in some out-of-time place, then prepare to be one of the out-of-time people in that place. You're going to be one of the weirdos. If you go to 50,000 years in the future, you're going to be one of the dingleberries, or the crazy people. If and that's probably what crazy people now are like. They're probably like, they're just young souls. And I know you can piss people off by saying shit like that, but like there was this the coach of an English football team 15 years ago, who said that, somebody had a car accident or whatever. He's like, oh, that's just bad karma from something he did mean in the past life, which is overly simplified, and it pissed off a lot of people. But see, that's not right. Like, people need to be saying blared out stuff like that, and then just have people, start a conversation. So that was it probably did start a conversation, but there's lots of reasons, but to say, see, the beautiful thing that God did is that you can't say, oh, that's because you're an old soul. You're a young soul because you're crazy. Because you could be crazy from being an old soul, and you're just here for any old other reason, a random reason. You could have an affinity for the community you're in, and the community you're in needs to learn a certain lesson, and so you go in there to teach their lesson, to teach them by being kind of a retarded person. I don't know. That wasn't a good example, but maybe people need to learn love. What love is, and love is you need to learn to love somebody for who they are and not for what position they hold. So you give them that gift to teach them the hard way, that kind of stuff. Or, or you could just be experimenting with that experience. That's a bizarre experience to be in, and you just want to live a life like that. So to say, oh, he's just a young soul, you're not allowed to say that because it could be anything. So, but that is one of the reasons. But anyways, yeah, you can reincarnate any time, at any time you want, time period. But most people, you reincarnate where you belong with the people you relate to, and people reincarnate alongside each other. A lot of people do for fun, because it's all about relationship. That's what being alive is, relationship and sharing your experiences, and people want to share experiences together. And so we all reincarnate reincarnate together, so we all reincarnate up through the line in history and future, but we don't have to, and we don't always do, and none of us do every time. Anyways, so that's a much more interesting conversation, like, that you can have with an atheist. And see, this is why I'm saying the atheists are idiots too, when you have the whole intelligent design versus evolution debate, is that you don't argue a fundamentalist Christian by... See, the fundamentalist Christian's problem is that he has a small mind and his imagination is small. So how are you going to fight? See, that's the fire. So why are you going to fight fire with fucking fire? Or are you going to fight his shit with stoop to his level? And you're going to defeat the simple-minded fundamentalist Christian by being even more simple-minded and saying, no, you're wrong. There's nothing. When you die, there's nothing. Ah, and that's the belief. No, dude. Then they're going to be like, they're going to think they're smarter than you. You have to out-complex them. You have to do mental gymnastics around them, lap them and lap them and lap them and make their head spin around with all of your ideas. And then they'll realize how dumb they are and they'll believe you and they'll go, oh yeah, that actually fits right into what I believe. It's just more expanded. But see, that's why I have a problem with atheists, because atheists are like, we're not a religion. Atheism isn't a religion. It's just, we don't believe it. And it's like, no. That's why there's the word agnostic. It's the agnostics who don't want to talk about it, don't know what they believe, and just are pissed off at the religions. But they don't believe that you're going to die that your soul's dead when you die, and they're not like convinced of it. It's like, if you're going to be so scientific as an atheist, then prove to me that your soul is extinguished when you die. How are you going to prove that to me? You can't prove it to me, so stop fucking telling me like you know. That's what an atheist is. They're people who talk to you like they know. And if you disagree with me right now, then call yourself an agnostic, for God's sake. Okay? You're an agnostic. You're an atheist if you think you know, which makes you not scientific because you can't prove it. So, and you can actually prove that the soul does exist, energy. What about the law of transference of energy? When a battery runs out, it's not like those electrons disappeared. They just went into whatever the battery was charging. When your soul runs out, it's not like there's no more juice in your body. It just, well, I guess you could say that about the electrical charge of your body, but it's like, don't you feel there's something energy stronger than? And then there's scientific reasons too. Your body loses 7 grams when you die, and belief in reincarnation, and then there's like actual physical stuff. Tai Chi masters shooting energy out of their hands. Reiki, you can do Reiki. We healed my friend's knee with Reiki. All kinds of stuff, and that's the next level of science. But the problem is see, that next level science stuff, and then this double slit experiment. You have DNA. There's this book called Lynn McTaggart called The Field, which I never read, but I want to read it. And there's other books too. I actually have a book that's way better than her book, way fucking bigger. It's like a Bible. It's like 5,000 pages, showing all the scientific experiments. Maybe I'll bust it out. All the scientific experiments, and that are inexplicable and all this kind of stuff, connecting the spirit world with the physical world. There's one about DNA unraveling. When you take your blood sample and you bring it to the other side of America and you get stressed out, your DNA will like tense up or something like that over there at the same exact time. Field, when the 9/11 accidents happened, the weather machines detected there was a change in the electromagnetic field. And they thought maybe that was from the minds of the people. Could have been from the Star Wars HAARP machine, which made the buildings disintegrate. But, there's all sorts of other, when somebody thinks people have their own personal stories. Somebody dies, something happened, somebody thinks about you, think about them. Psychic stuff. I could tell you all sorts of stuff like that. And I could even tell you stuff that's totally inexplicable. And I'll tell that right now, actually. I had a crack across my windshield of my van that went all the way across except for the last 4 inches for about 4 years. And then one morning it was gone. I also had a gaped teeth. And 3 days after my crack disappeared, my all this gum was hanging off in between my teeth, like hanging down. And looked in the mirror, my teeth had come together. So how do you explain that? Anyways, let's continue. Then I had an epiphany, yeah, my own consciousness. Why am I me and not you? Or some other living creature such as a dog. Then I started trying to remember back in my childhood, trying to figure out when I first realized I was conscious of my existence. Even on the scale of a single sperm and egg leading towards our eventual consciousness, bizarre and improbable. Yeah, some people claim to remember that. My uncle, my mom's brother, claims to remember his first birthday. I moved houses when I was 4 or something like that, 3 or 4. And I don't remember the first house. So I don't remember since before I was 3 or 4 for some reason. But I do remember, but then I moved again when I was 6. And I remember a zillion things about, the house I had when I was 4 to 6. Like it was my only house. But I mean, I don't even remember living there and knowing I lived in another house. It was weird. But holy shit, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, but like, but trying to remember what your religious and spiritual ideas were when you were a kid. And I remember always knowing that, believing in reincarnation and knowing that I was here before. And I mean, it was like obvious, but my parents believed that too. That was the thing. They believed in all that stuff before I was even born. They're Buddhists. And, but the spiritual thoughts that I had to do with infinity, and I think my mom actually sparked that in me, talking about infinity. It goes forever because they were talking me what the numbers are when I was learning numbers, and I was like, well, what's the biggest number? And they said infinity, and it looks like this, and I go, oh, okay, what does it mean? It means it's limitless, and I go, is it really a number? And they go, yeah, and I was like, wow, and so I remember being in the car and being like, infinity, and it's like. So then you just look at space and you just go out, and it keeps going. Or you look at time, or you look at your life, in reincarnation, just spins you. It's just insane to think about. I remember doing that like on a regular basis. It was pretty tripping me out. Once you get out, you're like, wow, infinity. But see, that's a good way to grow up and a good ideas to have because it's limitless. It's like whatever's possible. Imagine somebody who grew up in their formative years believing, this bullshit that they teach you in the Bible that the world was created 6,000 years ago by God and your soul was created like when you were born now out of nothing and then it's going to go burn in hell when you die. Or you'll disappear forever when you die, and then you get to go into heaven forever. So you live here once. It's so limited that if you grew up with that idea, you can't, somebody says something else to you. And then at the same time with that limited idea, they're also pumping in how idiotic everybody else is and that the devil's smarter than you. So don't try to argue with him and all this kind of shit. Well, then you're just afraid of any kind of other kind of idea and you won't even give them the time of day. You won't even listen to it. So, yeah, so anyways, so conscious of my existence, even on a scale of a single sperm and egg leading towards the eventual consciousness is bizarre and improbable. See, I never thought about that. Like, where am I, the sperm or the egg? No, I thought of my life basically starting when I was born, entering my mom's womb, maybe a couple months before that. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But whenever I'd go back, I would think about my previous life. I saw a magazine once of some dude, like, I thought I saw a magazine of some dude, like, pinned up, like, on the wall of a door, like Jesus Christ, like, crucified, and I was like, ooh, I'm that person. And I was like, I was that person? This didn't really happen, because there's no way they would have had a picture of a person on the door of us. It was like a classroom of kids in Mexico or something. I was that person. And I was like, and I thought about my past life, I was like, and I went, and it was everything. See, I'm on like 5, and this is before anybody told me anything about the tunnel or anything. But yeah, traveling through a tunnel, and then you're in like in an airport where you have to pass through the checkpoints with the little swivel things, but there were no swivel things, but it was a room, and there are people at desks. See, this is a situation that exists in this world. But I created it in my mind. Like when you die and you go to purgatory and that, pass through levels to get to like, wherever you're going to be, wherever you hang out before you're reborn, all this kind of stuff. It's not like you're flying through space. like a spirit flying through space, which is what you actually are, or whatever. No, you're in an actual world that you're familiar with, like with desks and chairs and tables and clothing. Like you create a world in your head, and that seems real. And so the world that I had created in my head was just a room with people sitting at desks, and you just getting processed. You just like go in there and give them the paperwork, and they look at you, and it's very sterile emotionally, very simple, very, very basic. And then you just pass through. It's like you're at the airport. But then you, before that, I was the person like 90 pounds pinned up against the door, withering away, starving, and then dying. And I was like, oh, wow, past life memory, that was that person. Anyways, it must have been like a picture of like, I don't know. It wasn't, I don't think I had any connection with the picture. I just looked at the picture, and then I happened to have a thought about reincarnation, and then that spun my mind out. Maybe because that was like the day after I had that dream. That dream about traveling through the tunnel in the process room, I think that was a dream I had right before I woke up. Yeah, or it was a waking dream. I can't remember what it was. I was like 5, but and actually you can have, like, I saw where my father went to after he died. The morning I had a dream, and it was like, and it wasn't like, here's where I am. It was more like, here's where he is. And it was a big donut shaped, made out of like wood, really basic wood, like trees. It was like a tree house in the middle of a forest where there was nothing around. And it was a big donut, maybe around a half mile around. And it was on the second floor. And as you walk around, it was like an expo of like all the different, races of alien or races of human. It was kind of impression of races of human, but it was bigger than that, races of alien. And you just walk around this big like thing, and it was like and on the edges of it, there were people on other sides just representing themselves. Like if you're at an expo, and just walking around like intermingling with other people. And that's where he went. That was where he was. And it was on a planet, blue sky, And then the next room, and then I had a dream, and then I was in the kitchen, and he walked across it was like walking across an invisible door where you become suddenly visible when you walk across it. And he just walked across, and he's like, hey, like it was like his duty to say hi to me or whatever. And I was like, oh, hey, so can you fly around? Can you fly? And he's like, no, you can't fly off of the earth. You're stuck to the earth. I was like, oh, okay, so that place, that was where you're at? Yeah. And he's like, okay, I have to go. And I was like, all right. And that was that. So, but we were both totally, I think that was him, So, yeah, so. But, anyways, So you've tried to remember about your own consciousness, even on the scale. See, if you're going to think about your own consciousness, you have to realize that it all starts with your imagination. So any imagination you have, like a dream about, and it's like in the context of the dream is that you're dead or you're in between lives and you're in this place. Don't go, oh, well, if I'm dead in between lives and I'm on top of an airplane, I'm inside of an airplane, and then the basement of the airplane is like as big as a big house. Like, how does that make any scientific sense? Of course that wasn't real. Like, it doesn't have to make scientific sense. You create in your mind. Where else are you going to go to? Like when you're dead or in the spirit world, like where else are you going to live? You're going to be like a blob of energy, like in the middle of blackness of space. How are you going to communicate with your friends? How are you going to recognize people who you've known from past lives? You have to recognize their face as humans dressed in clothing. You see, the human body isn't this monkey thing that evolved from tree climbers or whatever. The human body is a universal tool that spirits use to communicate with each other and to move around the earth. It's something that you don't own just on earth. You own it even when you don't need a body. You materialize body, but when you materialize as a human. You don't materialize as a... You could, if you wanted to, materialize as a dragon, but humans are more expressive and more tactile, more... You can communicate the best as a human, so... So you're human on the other side, and you use human things on the other side. Houses and doors and everything, Doors aren't just used to... So I just go to the other computer. Yeah, computers aren't used to... or doors just aren't used... Yeah, they're to, keep the bad guys out. Your doors are used to also help, keep your focus on here and not be distracted by what's out there. And so... there's the stuff that exists in this world exists in the spirit world as well. So yeah, what am I? So just trust your consciousness, when you have a dream, just trust that it's real. Why would you not trust yourself? If you're going to trust idiots telling you that the world was created 6,000 years ago since you're a baby and trust everything they say and trust other people, why would you not trust yourself? You should trust yourself before you trust anybody else. You're the only person who knows how the world is. So if you have a dream, believe your dream. Don't believe somebody else's fucking bullshit dream that somebody else told them, who told them, who told them. You're not like a robot. You're an individual. Trust yourself. Okay. Why am I not me and not you? Okay. Then I started trying to remember back into my childhood, trying to figure out when I was first realized as conscious of my existence. Even how skills from sperm or cell leading towards eventual consciousness is bizarre and improbable. Yeah, see, trying to imagine yourself as a sperm or an egg, are you the sperm or the egg? See, sperms and eggs are single-cell organisms. They're their own deal. They're providing a service for you. They have the package, but it doesn't mean they are the package. A sperm is the soul that inhabits a sperm is the same kind of soul that inhabits an amoeba. Okay, very, very young souls, little guys. So you weren't the soul, you weren't the egg. The sperm created the egg and then created this tool that you were going to use later. It grew, and then once it grew big enough and developed its nervous system, it said, the soul was like, okay, I'll jump in and have you. And now how does one... Well, then you could say, well, how do you catch dibs? What if another soul get in there and catch dibs before you? I think it's some kind of agreement that you make between yourself and your parents, in a relationship that you have in a bond, and at that point nothing else can break that and get in between. That's how that works, because you are a family beforehand and you have that connection. So therefore you don't have to be sitting in there, but you would want to anyways, because it's your family, it's your mother, So that's how that works. It's not like in the spirit world. See, in the spirit world, spirits aren't totally conscious of everything they do. They're not like, oh, that one's going to try to get her. No way. That's a rich family. I'm going to push you out and get in. No, they don't control that. It's a lot more what's left-brained, artistic, spread out consciousness. So you basically do what your instincts tell you to do, and you just kind of go wherever you go. You go with the flow like the water, and so you just gravitate towards wherever you go. The more conscious you are, the more conscious you can be. But I mean, you do choose where you're born into. It's just a sliding scale on how much choice you have based on how advanced you are. And so that's kind of the allure of having a body in the first place. It's because you can really focus all of your energy and who you are and who you want to be on such a small, minute scale that you have so much control. Like I'm here now. I can watch the seconds go by. I could throw a rock through that window and break it right now, or I could kill myself. I could do whatever. So that's not the exciting stuff, though. The exciting stuff is to create the world around you and make a cool utopian world so we can all, experience better and better and do more and more. So, anyways. So, on a scale, sperm and egg, okay, towards eventual consciousness, towards bizarre and improbable. Even though we don't have any scientific evidence for a soul, do you think the soul... Well, we do have evidence. That's the reincarnation. And You know, the 7 grams losing and the DNA experiment, all that stuff. Psychic communication and all the science, psychic stuff, you know. The America's Best Psychic, maybe if you can YouTube it. They did amazing shit, man. They would like put somebody in a trunk of a car in a car dealership with hundreds of cars, and they would go right to it. They'd bury somebody in 2 acres of land. They go right to it. They took him to like where Janis Joplin died. They explained how she died. Crazy. Anyways, there's proof of a soul, because how else are they communicating? Oh, it's some kind of mental radio program inside the brain that magically. So how does it magically communicate with each other? Why does psychic power with each other communication work if we've never used it? Like, how is it ingrained in us? Because that's from above. There's something from above, and that's us using that part of ourselves. Okay. You know, like radio, you could never prove to somebody that like radio waves exist, but now we can prove they exist because of our cell phones. Same thing with the psychic people. But that's our soul, that's us. Anyways, but that we haven't even gotten to the juicy one yet, the double slit experiment. Okay, so even though we don't have scientific evidence for soul, do you think the soul provides the answer to our own unique individual existence? Yes, I do think it does. And how does the soul provide the answer to our own unique individual existence? Well, you know, you can go wherever you want to go in this life. You know, go there, go there, go there. Same thing with the soul. The computer you use was a product produced in a factory, and it serves the purpose we assign it. In human terms, you exist, but you can't understand where your thoughts, programming originated. Well, you can understand where they originated if you study history, because, you know, our belief system, that's a thought or program. And those belief systems are from religion and from our society, and so it's history. Or where the design of consciousness came from. Also, if you could please look up the video Dr. Quantum Double Slit Experiment. It shows how the universe is far more complex than our human comprehension. I was wondering if you feel the fact that we exist at all is so unlikely and inexplicable that it proves that there is much greater forces at play than we can possibly explain. Well, yeah, I mean, look at how many stars and planets and stuff there are. There has to be more like us, you know. If you, like the Hubble, if you put your finger of, you know, a meter out from you, the tip of a needle, that's that famous picture from the Hubble. That's the field size of the famous picture from the Hubble, where it's like 100 galaxies, you know. And each galaxy is as big as ours, and so yes, so it's not like if the universe is that big, it's not improbable or impossible, it's inevitable, you know. Okay. Comprehension. I was wondering if you feel the fact that you exist all is so unlikely and inexplicable, but with so much greater forces at play than we can possibly explain. Please also comment on thoughts of the experiment. Okay, so now, as far as the universe being bigger than our comprehension and human comprehension's relationship to infinity, let's talk about that, and then the double slit experiment, but I have to pee. I'll be right back. Okay, so yeah, so like human comprehension, people's relations. I want to talk really quickly about humans' relationship with our comprehension. Trying to like universe is too big for us to comprehend, and then using that as a reason to kind of not want to philosophize about stuff, or saying, oh, that's too much for us to comprehend. That's a lame excuse. You can, and also, but actually, that's not what I really wanted to talk about. If you want to, the idea, like, you need to realize that our goal as humans is to comprehend more. The more we comprehend, the better. So that's how we grow. That's how we continue to stay happy and be happier. You know, if you're going to stay happy, you can't do the same thing you've always done. You got to do new things and grow. And so you comprehend more. And so you want to develop a society that fosters comprehending more and more. And so how are you going to do that? Well, you have to do that by allowing people to talk to each other, allowing people to say what they believe, allowing belief systems to become the mainstream through meritocracy, you know, because they're allowed to share their ideas with everybody, and everybody decided they were the best idea, and so they went ahead, you know, instead of suppressing and shutting people up and shutting people down, and you gotta play fair. But the more open-minded you are, the more we're going to learn. So you have to consider and argue and talk about every idea. That's how you do it. That's how you so a society that is more open-minded is going to comprehend more. It's like intelligence. The more information you gather, the more you're going to know. So why would you want to like burn books or make certain books illegal so you can't talk about politics or religion to your family, or or get afraid of anything having to do with sexuality, so they don't teach sex ed in school because that's going to lead to threesomes. I saw that video on Young Turks this morning. Some guy on Fox News is on there. Don't teach sex ed to people, it'll lead to, it's like so afraid, like don't teach this, don't teach them that, don't tell them this, it'll lead to the bad things. No, teaching and telling and telling and teaching leads to good things. Not teaching and not telling, holding secrets, that leads to bad things. And if you do it too long, it leads to wars and revolutions and all that stuff. So the double slit experiment. This is the coolest experiment that I've ever that I can think of that exists. And in fact, I forgot to Wikipedia it because they're starting to do this double slit experiment on like bigger and bigger fucking things, dude. It's pretty badass. So if you want to watch a thing about what the double slit experiment is, Dr. Quantum is actually the best one, the best explanator of it. I recommend you watch it. I'm going to look it up on Wikipedia here real quick because I just want to see what it works on. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. So the double slit experiment is where scientists wanted to know like if matter is a wave or a particle. Photons are a wave or a particle. Like the photons and the electrons that come and from the sun and and energy and all that kind of stuff, as we're learning more about electrons and stuff. So other variations. Hang on. Buckyballs, 60 carbon atoms, 810 atoms. That's it. Okay, good. Okay, so anyways. So they would send electrons through a slit, and then they would have a little film detect it on the other side. So they would send the electrons one at a time, and they would have the film detect it one at a time. So they're like, okay, I guess electrons are a particle, that's cool. So then they're like, well, let's stick them. Let's have two slits and watch the particles go through both of the slits, just to see the nature of how they move and stuff. Like if they land at the same place each time or whatever. And so they would have the two slits, so they would pass through and they would fill up both sides like you would expect them to, paint it in the shape of the slits. So then they were like, okay, cool, well, let's turn it off and just let it do that for a while, and then we'll come back. So they turned it off, and they didn't do it with the camera and watching them go through, and they came back. And it had a totally different effect when they didn't watch it than when they did watch it. When they didn't watch it, the screen on the other side, it wasn't like two lines. It was, it was like very dense in the middle where the lines were, but between the lines, it was like gradually getting lighter until in the middle where it was basically light, and then gradually getting lighter as it got closer to the middle, which suggested that they were acting as waves because it was like you were shooting all the electrons in through those two slits at the very same time, and so they were all bouncing off of each other at the same time. Because if you push water, because water moves like a wave, if you're going to put those two slits halfway into water, and then push the water, it's actually, if you type double slit experiment on Wikipedia. It shows it right here. I don't even have to explain it. Yeah, it does that. It acts as a wave bouncing off each other. That's what it looks like in a wave. You push the water through, the water goes through the slits, and then it creates the wave going out from the slit. So then these two waves, they come and they hit each other, and then they bounce off and they create more waves, and they create more and more waves, and then they hit the screen in that way, the way that the water does when it goes out, and there's concentrations of the hits because they hit each other in the middle, but less concentration in the middle of the slits. So they were like, but how does that happen? Because there's three tools to this experiment. There's the gun. Well, I guess there's four. There's the electron, but then there's three tools on it. There's the gun, which shoots the electron. There's the film, which receives the electron. I'm sorry, there's four, actually. There's the slits. There's the little barrier that has the slit cut in it. And then the fourth is the camera that records. It's a third-party camera that records the electron going through the slit. Okay, so you kind of record the electrons in two places. You record the camera, the electron leaving the camera and going through the slit. I guess you record it from the camera shooting it, or no, you record it from the slit, and then you record it, and then you record it on the screen. So three different places. So if they have the camera turned off and they're just shooting the electrons through one at a time when they're not watching them, each one individually, then the screen shows the two lines. Okay. Now, if you ask that gun to do it the same exact way, only now you have a camera watching each and every electron go through, then it's a line. It goes through the splits. But if you shoot it and you're not looking at it, then it turns into a wave. Now, the amazing thing about that experiment and why it's inexplicable is that what's the relationship between the camera that watches the electrons go by and the gun that shoots the electrons? Because you would think, because the camera is affecting the gun, the actions that the gun takes. But the camera is not connected to the gun. They're two separate entities, the problem is you don't know how it turns into a wave when you turn the camera off, because you have no way of monitoring it, because your camera is your monitor. So basically monitoring it basically solidifies it. It solidifies an infinite probability field into an actual now real reality. Okay, so that's kind of like electrons are in the spirit world. But the really trippy thing about this is that then they did it with bigger things. So they did it with 60. They did it with buckyballs, which are these carbon atoms, 60 carbon atoms together, formed together in one of those geodesic domes, like the Epcot Center. And each nodal point where those lines come together in the Epcot Center represents a carbon atom. And so the carbon atoms are connected with their electrons. And so they the scientists figured out how to make a buckyball, 60 carbon atoms. And they did the double slit experiment with those, and it worked. And then they made even bigger ones. They made carbon molecules. I'm sorry, it wasn't a carbon atom. They made carbon molecules. I guess it was carbon molecules. They said molecules, but 810 atoms. So instead of 60 carbon atoms, now they've got 810 with 10,000 atomic mass units, working with the double slit experiment. Now, a carbon atom is about, I don't know the exact width of it, but it's about the same width as the coil on your DNA. When your DNA, we have chromosomes, which look like a figure eight. It actually looks like infinity, interestingly enough. But it's what it is it's wrapped up, twisted up, coiled DNA. Our DNA are two strands, X and Y, and they're coiled together. And when you twist them and coil them, they create the molecule, and if you unravel it, I guess it goes around the Earth like 4 times. But if you look at the actual coil, the width of the coil as it goes around, it's about the same width as a buckyball, just to give you an example. Now, a buckyball is 60. Now, this other atoms are using is 810, so that's what, like 10 times wider or something like that? So now we're talking even wider than your DNA. But see, so if these little buckyball things can just go into the spirit world like that, and they're the same size as your DNA strand, then your DNA, is something that lives in the spiritual world, but it is also open up to hyperdimensional programming. It's still a probability field. It's in that world of the probability field of, you have all these different genes and these latent genes and active genes, but which genes are you going to activate? And which ones are you going to keep latent? It's all up to you, your mind, your soul. You can fuse that reality into that probability field into reality, and so the other ramifications, suggestions of the double slit experiment are that, if you want to turn it into like a spiritual lesson, is that the physical world is just a set of probabilities, and it's not even physical anyways. It's just a mixture of chemical reactions and subatomic energy relationships. Like if you get if the nucleus was as big as your fist, then the electron would be at the outer edges of a football stadium. And so everything here is just emptiness, like if a photon passes through you, X-rays pass through you, they pass right through that, and through that void, of the football stadium. And if they happen to hit your nucleus of your cell, and of your all that kind of stuff, that's how they can do damage. But most of the time they don't. But even in the nucleus of an atom is composed of energy. It's composed of quarks, which exist very briefly and then disappear and come back. I think 66%, and then one 66% and 233 or whatever. They balance each other out, 2 positives and 1 negative, and they come and disappear. Like they only exist for 22 zeros after 1 in a second, and then disappear. And anyways, and then the atoms, all the cool changes you can make with chemistry and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, it's very, very complex, but yeah, it's just a probability field that we're all living in, and we that's the perfect example right here is this, and if we have that much control over physical reality with tools that we can make with our hands out of rocks we dig out of the ground, imagine what kind of power we could have when we're actually in the spirit world, or what kind of power we can have actually with our minds. Like if we can, like creating cancer in yourself, you can create cancer, or you can heal cancer by on a cellular level, because everything starts on a cellular level. Cancer starts from one cell going bad because its nucleus told it to. So then cancer can be healed by one cell becoming not cancerous over and over again. Like it's like your belief creates reality, but your belief creates reality literally. And you can and the whole conversation of how to plug the results of the double slit experiment into practical uses is something that I haven't gotten good at. But it's also, you can also use it interestingly other ways, like mentioning it to atheists or a closed-minded scientist or something, and just seeing the reaction and how they would just knee-jerkingly say that it was been explained when they obviously don't know what they're talking about. They're just assume it's been explained because everything else has, but it hasn't been explained. And don't let somebody tell you that, because if you're like, but the double slit experiment, oh, that's been explained. Ask them to explain to you how the the detector can communicate with the gun, you know? So basically, yeah, like if you focus on something, then you make it reality, you know? Because what we're doing is we're focusing on these electrons going through, and we're watching them, and then we're seeing where they go. But now we're not watching it, and it snaps back to default, which is like, okay, whatever. It all goes. But it all goes and it all shows because we're having it go. So I guess if you're not paying attention to what's going on in your life, like stuff will happen randomly. You know, you will get struck by lightning, or you will get hit by that car, you know, like they say, or you will get that you'd be, you know, 30% chance of getting cancer or whatever. But if you live your life consciously, every moment consciously, and you know that every moment has a purpose, then and you give a purpose to it, and you have a trajectory for your whole life and everything, then it's like you've got yourself locked in, and no other reality can come and step in its place because you've locked it in. You've created your reality because you're paying attention, the same way that you've locked in the reality, paying attention to the the electrons going past. So, you know, and you can actually, you know, and what greater empowerment is that when you have empowerment of your own body and your own mind, you know, not to get sick, not to be swayed in your mental ideas about stuff, and it's not explainable, but you can explain the double. See, the cool thing about double slit experiment is it has all these special relationships with the whole spiritual world and spiritual concepts. For example, the non-existence of time. The double slit experiment, it proves the non-existence of time because it shows that the freaking 810 molecule chunk of matter passing through, if you're not paying attention to it, becomes an infinite number of them all connected to each other like a web, basically. And then only to do what you tell it to, not by your actions, but by your attention. All you need to do is look at it and go, okay, that's going to go there, you know, or okay, those are going to go randomly. So like maybe the next level to the double slit experiment is to have a bunch of people sitting around and trying to say, okay, put that electron on that part of the screen, only in there, and maybe steer it. Because people have, who's that guy? The spoon bender, Yuri Gerov or whatever. I can't remember. Anyways, he says he can bend spoons. I haven't seen YouTube videos of it, but you know, people who have done experiments and they say they can do stuff. You can all focus on something and move it a little bit. So, but you know, and then that goes into like telekinesis, and we can use telekinesis with sound, with chanting. But chanting is only another form of vibration, and it's the more crude form. So maybe you can move stuff with a, you know, more subtle vibration and telekinesis, and all that stuff. You know, if you can imagine it, it's possible. That's where it all originates. You know, and you know, even looking at the human body, with our endocrine system, with all of our glands, they communicate with the spirit world. They shoot off hundreds of different hormones throughout our body from 12 different glands we have connected to our chakras. We've always known about the chakras and where the chakras are for thousands of years. Lo and behold, scientists come around thousands of years later, and right on the chakra happens to be a gland secreting hormones, you know? Like the sexual chakra with the testicles, and our throat chakra with the thymus, and our crown chakra with the pineal gland, and the pituitary gland with the this chakra. Well, that's our soul communicating with our body, you know, with the subtle means, you know, like with those little leverage points, the hydraulics, you know, like how you fly a plane, you with the cold wiring, with the wires, you pull a little bit, hydraulics make the wing turn, you know. You get excited, your adrenal gland shoots out adrenaline, you get super strong, that kind of thing. It's all the original steerer is the soul, is you, is your mind. That's the thing that thinks and does all this stuff and tells your mind what to do. You know, That's why you have such an active imagination when you dream. You just put the pieces together. Like I said at the beginning of the video, the scientists not communicating with each other. Well, proper science is data, the analyzation of data. You need to analyze all the data, though, not just a certain segment of the data, like the one science. If you analyze all the different data from all the sciences, all the different religions and sciences and attitudes and everything, then you come to the conclusion, the scientific conclusion, that there is a soul. And that's the proof. But you have to list all those different things and put them together like it's one thing, and not like they're disparate, not having anything to do with each other. Why do they not have anything to do with each other? Because our human society has put them in different disciplines in our schools, and so therefore they don't have anything to do. That's ridiculous. Of course they have something to do with each other. It all has to do with each other, and it all paints the picture that we're all exist in this higher dimensional world. The problem that we can't scientifically prove it is that we don't have any funding for that kind of stuff. We can't do this double slit experiment over and over again in all the different colleges or the DNA non-locality field experiments, or the psychic experiments, or this experiment or that experiment. It has to be like America's next top psychic and shit. We don't have the money for that. And all these fundamentalist Christians are trying to take the money away because they're like, no, God gave us the answer 6,000 years ago, fucking Abraham. It's like, oh my God. You're going to take our first world away from us, you idiot fundamentalist Christians. You got to understand, man. Fucking use your brain, dude. So, yeah, okay. I think I'll end it with that. Good request again, Daft Bugger. Peace out.